right, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is MedAffairs Talk. As you guys know, we tend to cover different topics in the space of medical affairs, in particular when it comes to innovation in medical affairs and new technologies in medical affairs. Today, we actually have a very, very interesting topic, and this is definitely something that is top of mind for everyone, I would say, even beyond, actually, probably mostly beyond medical affairs, which is artificial intelligence. And obviously, everyone has been seeing on the news and everywhere, I would say, about ChatGPT and this wow effect you get when you first use it. The topic for today is artificial intelligence in medical affairs, and we really want to speak a little bit about potential applications, where we are, maybe try to also speak about what's real and what's still probably not so real yet. And the good news is that we have an expert with us, so I'll let him introduce himself in a second. But again, given that definitely none of us, I am no expert when it comes to artificial intelligence, and Marika, maybe you are a bit more of an expert than I am, but it's good to have an actual expert with us. So I'm Luca Desani with Medical Affairs with Johnson and Johnson. Marika.
Thank you, Luca. I wish I was an expert, but I am watching from the sidelines, and I'm definitely going to learn a lot today in our conversation. Online, we've heard so much about ChatGPT and how it's changing life, the world around us, and definitely too in medical affairs. I don't think it's a question of when or if we're going to use artificial intelligence, but it's how we're going to use it. And how are we going to advance, make life easier for us, and how are we going to impact patient outcomes? So with that, when I found Josh, I was super excited to hear about his work, and I hope he will share lots of his work with all of us as well. I also want to remind everybody, when you put a comment or a question in the comments section on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you are, we actually get to see the comments and the questions, and I'll moderate the chat a little bit more than normally. So do an @ Marika, and I'll try to ask the question for you. So with that, my name is Marika Jonkman from the Medical Affairs Leadership Institute, and Josh, please.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the nice introduction. So I am also not an AI expert, but heavily involved in building these tools. And I think what we've done will certainly be interesting probably to groups. And so I am the co-founder and CEO of Cite.ai. Cite is really trying to introduce the next generation of citations. I have a PhD in cell biology. I finished that about 8 years ago at Virginia Tech. And the initial idea that we were working on had nothing to do with ChatGPT. I didn't even know about large language models or generative text. We were focused primarily on reproducibility. And that is, how do you know if research is right or wrong? How do you keep up with massive amounts of research? And so maybe we have PubMed alerts, which is what I had in grad school, maybe other systems. It's just a massive amount of content. And so the idea behind Cite really borrowed from my experience as a researcher, which was, how do we know what has been tested in the literature? How do we know what has been challenged? How do we know what has been supported? And then also, how do we just understand it all, right? It's becoming increasingly interdisciplinary. There are preprints now. There's just a flood of information that it's hard for anyone to keep up with. And, relying upon table of contents and emails and things like this, quickly becomes kind of untenable. And so the main thing that we do at Cite is make it easy to see how and why a scientific article has been cited by showing the citation context. And so we're extracting out that information from the full text, and then we're applying a deep learning model that allows you to see if these citations are presenting supporting evidence or competing evidence to the claim. And so I, a cell biologist, spent 5 years doing microscopy, didn't know about any of these deep learning models or ChatGPT, but had this problem, which was, how can we look at millions of scientific documents and show these rich connections, right? And slowly, I did it very manually, where we'd look at hundreds of papers and say, all right, this paper is citing this because they support it. This paper's challenging it. Can I do that as a human? And if I can do that as a human, do we think we can teach machines to do that? And so for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been building a system where we analyze the full text of scientific articles. We partner with publishers around the world. We basically chop them up into little pieces. And then we have this AI that classifies these excerpts from the full text of scientific articles as presenting supporting evidence, as a method citation, things like this. And so while we've been doing that, the world has made these leaps and bounds in generative text, and AI has come to dominate, what we're thinking about. How is this going to impact my job? Is it going to take away from my job? Is it going to make it easier? Is this cheating? Is this trustworthy, et cetera? And so, this topic that we've been focused on of kind of nerdy citations and really trying to improve that is now at the forefront, because if you think about what is most needed around ChatGPT, I think it's trust, right? How can we trust these very powerful machines? They make up sources. They look extremely right. They're exceedingly easy to kind of produce any of this, but how can we validate that? And that's some of what we're working on at Scite.
So we don't usually do this, but can you share your screen and give us a little bit, because it works, it's so fascinating to see.
Yeah, so give me 1 second.
There we go.
Okay, so can you hear me all right and see it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, so effectively what we're doing is taking ChatGPT output, the API, and this actually just became open as of yesterday.
1 second. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah.
Because it's black for me.
Yeah, it's still black. Yeah. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Now I can see it.
Go ahead, Josh. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so what we are doing here is, we have an engine where you can use Boolean queries and things like this. What we are trying to do is to say these large language models, ChatGPT is exceedingly powerful. How can we kind of control that power, right? And so we allow people to ask natural language questions, to kind of prompt tasks just like ChatGPT. But the difference of what we're doing is we're taking that output from ChatGPT, so we're calling their API, and we're taking these sentences and then matching that against the literature, the scientific literature, which we have pretty unique access to. And so my work was focused on aneuploidy, so extra chromosomes, and specifically we were looking at colorectal cancer. And so you could ask a question like this, which chromosomes are most frequently gained in colorectal cancer? You are now getting a summary that is very easy to ask this and query, and it will say the most frequently gained chromosomes in colorectal cancer is chromosome 7. So ChatGPT might get this right, but you don't know, right? And so with Scite, you get these sources, which are real scientific articles, and then here is that source. And so we're taking that sentence and more or less matching it based on the words to see, is this actually what the literature says, right? And so here you can see Reed demonstrated the gain of chromosome 7 in 4 of 12, in these colorectal adenomas. It gives you some other sources you can highlight over, and then you yourself can see, okay, here's this source, but of course, sources can be debated as well. And so we present, supporting citations and contrasting citations. And so the idea is basically, let's harness this exceedingly powerful way to do things, but let's verify and produce this way that humans can quickly see, is that right? Right. And so these are all the excerpts of text taken from the literature. So hopefully, yeah, it's helpful to kind of see that before talking about it in such an abstract way.
And I need to say I love where we are going here, because when I think of ChatGPT and medical affairs, it's very hard for me to think of immediate applications of something that is so beautiful in terms of how fluent the system is, and how you get like such a beautiful style and answer to your queries. However, exactly to your point, you never know whether you can trust or not the answer, right? So the problem is not fluency. That's actually pretty good. The problem is accuracy, right? Can I trust the the answer I get. And obviously, in a highly regulated environment like healthcare and pharma, you need to be pretty sure that whatever you say is scientifically accurate, and you have ways to support whatever statement you're making. And if I try to put myself in the shoes of an MSL in the field who is well, right now I don't think it's even a thing, but one day potentially may just leverage something like a AI powered search engine like ChatGPT equivalent for science. There's always going to be that question: is this true, right? Is this accurate? Is this answer I'm getting the real thing? So what you guys are doing, the work you are doing, is really going in that direction of like fact checking, right? Making sure that the answers you are getting are actually accurate. I guess my question is, though, on the larger framework we have, and again, it's a very highly regulated environment. So even though I love the idea of kind of almost like decision automation here, you basically rely 100% on algorithm, on artificial intelligence to address, let's say, a question you get from an HCP. I'm still kind of struggling a little bit to see kind of regulators allowing something like that, right? So the idea that there is no real human fact checking into something that you provide, an answer that you provide to customers or HCPs. So do you have any thoughts in terms of, again, highly regulated environment? How are we gonna push this technology for broader utilization, but at the same time being compliant to all the different rules and regulations we have in this environment?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of use cases that goes looking at text, it goes looking at protein structures, kind of all these different things that science is, or biomedical research is. There's going to be different applications, and I think it'll have to kind of be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Like, what does this mean for regulations? Can we trust it? Is there something repeatable? The API is pretty remarkable in itself. If you ask the same question, you don't always get the same results, right? And so I think keeping the human in the loop will be very important still. And I think making their jobs easier is kind of how I see things going forward. But trust is exceedingly important, and it's not an entirely new problem, right? Without ChatGPT, people are going to Google, right? What is the ground source of Google, right? There's these articles, highly relevant. People are making massive decisions that we've seen in headlines, and even if they're relying upon a quote unquote good source, that source may not be updated, right? And so this is primarily why scientists get into things, right? Is to try and help solve problems, and why we specifically have gotten into citations is not because we care about the impact factor or things like this, but because we think we can help people better understand, better discover, and better utilize research, whether that's an MSL or whether that's a patient or whether that's for your mom asking you these questions about these things. And so I think the thing that I usually start my talks out on is research is amazing. It touches every single aspect of our lives. It's very hard to get that information out, though, right? It is hard because it's costly. It's hard because there's systems just not good for it. PubMed is a government search system, and no offense to PubMed, is not, where I think we could be. And so Google itself, was started around ranking academic papers and ballooned into what it is now. And so I think we will have to be very considerate of kind of these different regulators. But if you can show it clearly to a person, and I think you can do that from a product perspective and a technical perspective, I think it will be adopted. And I do think that's where we're headed, because it is so powerful to kind of do all these different things.
Right. Okay.
I can keep going on and on, but I don't want to feel too preachy at this point. Yeah.
Go ahead, Luca.
No. Yeah, no. I mean, I can. I have other questions. I thought you were about to ask something, but I guess and I'm actually also reading some of the comments I'm seeing, and clearly there is this trust issue, right? Which is not honestly unique to artificial intelligence in medical affairs. I mean, any new technology, as you guys know very well, is usually faced with some resistance when it comes to initial adoption. And this is, again, nothing unique to artificial intelligence. However, I think maybe it's intrinsic on the idea that this is intelligence, right? So you tend to be skeptical whenever you don't feel in control, and you give control to a computer when it comes to your decision making, right? So again, I think my preference, at least at the beginning, right, in this journey, my preference is I leverage artificial intelligence, exactly to your point, Josh, to do the hard lift, to crunch all those, all that huge volume of data and data sources and citations and references, and I get something that I can then act upon, right? But I still feel that I'm in control when making the final decision, right? To me, it's more, again, around decision augmentation at this point than decision automation. So, and don't get me wrong, I hope that one day we're really going to get to a point that I can sit on a sunny beach and have a computer working for me. I'm just not quite there yet when it comes to wrapping my head around allowing artificial intelligence to completely replace human judgment and the work of an MSL or a medical director in medical affairs. So again, can you maybe speak to how, at least at the beginning, artificial intelligence can potentially be complementary and synergistic to the medical director or MSL's judgment, as opposed to perhaps completely replace their intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of like a superpower, right? And you get to harness this superpower for whatever you want, right? And so I think having a way that you don't have to understand everything, but you can explicitly understand how this decision was arrived upon is really important. And so I think this is like almost less than kind of an AI question, but more of like a UX type question, right? And so people often come to us and say, how good is your deep learning model? What is the precision score of this? And I say, it's 0.85 for this, it's 0.8 for this. But if they totally misunderstand what we're actually doing, it doesn't matter how good the model is, right? And so there's this other element, and I think that's why ChatGPT took the world by storm, is because it made this user experience very fluid and easy, and you just talk to it, right? Now it's extremely easy to talk with it. You don't have to call an API. It's not this weird box before, because there was basically GPT out there already. It was until ChatGPT took off. And so I think the UX, like the user experience aspect, and what you can see as a human and what you can verify as a human, is exceedingly important, right? You can spend $5 million training a model, all these, ingesting the World Wide Web, but it needs to be developed in a way for humans to understand, for humans to validate, for humans to show other humans so that they can trust it. Because right now, if you start to show ChatGPT, maybe you can't verify it right now, and maybe people can't tell that it's it, but we're all going to now start to wonder, is this AI output, right? And so I think increasingly there's going to be more tools and services and things like this that lend some credibility, whether that's a check on, is this AI or not? Or if it is AI and we're comfortable using AI, okay, how can we verify and trust that what the AI is saying? And so I think increasingly, all the tasks that we do day to day, like we shouldn't be proud to have laborious, monotonous tasks, right? We should want to optimize and make these more efficient. We need to do that in a way, though, that like we can still understand, and really harness those things. And so, I think keeping it simple as possible and it will build trust, and that will be key for large adoption. Because right now it's like, yeah, this is cool and I can do fun things and tell it this, but it's not probably in your day-to-day yet. I do think it'll get there as people start to develop it for these specific tasks, and it's paired with trust. And so having that human feedback is really important, I think, for OpenAI, which is probably why they release it a bit early, because then they get all this like, oh my God, this is horrible, this is not good. Then they know what to work on, right? And so I think that's increasingly important, is this kind of interpretability of it. Because if I say, here's a drug target, and we spent $20 million and there's 20 AI models on that, all right, that's hard to interpret, it's hard to understand, it's hard to trust. But I think that doesn't have to be the only application of AI. And I think building in those systems of trust will be, pretty critical. And so one thing that, has come up for us is, as you're writing and related to regulations, you have to write very specific things, right? Legal is approving this language in specific areas. And so to get the approval to say certain things, you have to ground that in some truth, right? And so maybe you'll spend hours and hours searching through the literature to find, here's what I want to say about this disease, this drug, this topic. Where is the source that supports that? And so I think AI can help with that. It doesn't even have to be AI. It could just be like Boolean queries. And I think, again, what I'm trying to highlight here, I guess, is the user experience and kind of the product perspective or the tool of it matters a lot, right? Your glasses are not going to work as good if they're like, hanging off your face here, but, you put them together in a nice structure, then they become exceedingly powerful tools. And so that aspect, I think, is missing a little bit so far, but I think it's coming.
So one other question I have for you, because I was wondering if there is an opportunity to, obviously what you guys are doing, and again, I apologize, the probably not very specific and appropriate wording, but I'm really just not an expert. But I think what you guys offer is this almost like fact checking on what artificial intelligence gives you. I was wondering, is there a way you could train the artificial intelligence with data sources that we trust? So instead of pulling data from the web and then having to fact check, of course, what it gives you, is there a way we can, on top of doing that probably still remains, but is there a way we could train the algorithm and train the machine on data sources we do trust? So basically doing some of that fact checking upstream, so that you have a higher level of confidence that whatever you get in return to your queries is actually scientifically accurate.
Yeah, I think you're basically highlighting this kind of saying garbage in, garbage out, right? If you have too much, you're training on everything, you're going to get a lot of noise, right? And so if you restrict it to certain disciplines, that can clearly help. And it depends upon the tasks. And so ChatGPT, undoubtedly uses millions of scientific articles, but they are locked out of millions as well, many millions, right? And so I think it's an idea that people have done where they've PubMed-BERT and Google Scholar-BERT and things like this, where they have restricted it. I think the power of kind of ChatGPT is that it utilizes not just language in that, because it is pretty nice to have this natural language query and to maybe ask things that you're not going to find in a scientific article. I think what we have done is to say, what if we can kind of marry these two approaches, like as you mentioned, like validate or fact check a little bit. And I don't think that it has to be just through our UI. It could be like an API call where here is a sentence. Is that sentence matched in the literature, right? And again, that itself is kind of just the first step, because just because it's in the literature doesn't mean it's right? And so I think highlighting as a way to kind of fact check, and I used to describe Scite as like a BS detector for science, is kind of at the heart of what we're trying to do. And I think it goes to, here's an article, how has it been cited? Has it been challenged? Has it been supported? Now it can go to, here's a sentence. What is the source for that? What is that source? Has that been cited? Has that been supported? And ultimately, I also think what is pretty interesting around all of this is that the AI is kind of priming the pump for humans to contribute more into, right? So it's going to get, better as we give feedback and say, this is not a good answer, this is a good answer, this is a better one. It will learn from this and become, more sophisticated in a sense. And I think, there's say we had every single scientific article in the world, there is still a lot of tacit knowledge that humans have. And I think as we contribute that tacit knowledge into the system, whether that's correcting things or adding stuff just there, again, that's this feedback loop will kind of continue to get more intelligent. So I think, yeah, the world of, citations needed is kind of defines Wikipedia, but I think it's going to equally define like where we're going for ChatGPT, because to me, the biggest thing is like, okay, that's good, but where are the citations for this? And Bing, has this now, and footnotes and citations are now suddenly becoming something that we all see, not just academics or not just researchers. It's a main interface.
Yeah, no, thank you, Josh. And I know we are almost at time, so I want to first of all thank you for your time and all the great insights. I think we can probably spend hours on this topic. Yeah. I'm hearing. I mean, I think there is a genuine curiosity within the medical affairs world on artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence can potentially make our life easier. I hope maybe we can have another session if your schedule allows in the coming month, especially as we are, it's a very rapidly evolving space. So every other week, pretty much, we get some new interesting features or perspectives. So again, I'd love the opportunity to continue the conversation. I also want to remind everyone we do have another MedAffairs Talk session next week, right, Marika? Isn't it next Friday? So we're going to be speaking about competency models for medical affairs professionals. So it's a very different topic, but still extremely important. And again, thank you. I'm sorry we couldn't really get to all the comments we received. I'm seeing also Bora, who used to do some of the sessions with us. So this is really good. I hope we can maybe address some of these points in one of the future meetings. So again, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Marika. Marika, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I have final thoughts. I'd love the idea of having a follow-up session on this, because we've now gotten into the basics of what it is, but really, how can this implement medical affairs, and how can we in the future how can we, like you said, make things easier, but how can it implement patient outcomes eventually? And so I may not be so much of the digital person, but how it impacts, I still have lots of questions. So I'd love to have a follow-up if that's okay with you, Josh.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm happy to talk about this at length, and now it's a Friday afternoon, so it's fun, and certainly appreciate learning from you guys and hearing those questions, and the audience as well.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a nice weekend, and see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.